Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
My friends, it is what it is. I used to say that to piss someone off. Welcome back to podcast 16 of 2020. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at The Odds Breakers and follow us on social media / The Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by MyBookie.ag. For a 50% bonus, please visit MyBookie and use the promo code The Odds Breakers. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs and sponsor the podcast, we would love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member for $17.99 a month. You can get my plays and premium plays before the line moves for $2 more. You can have all that and become a patron subscriber, get the podcast a little bit early, and if nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. It is what it is. And I used to have a boss that absolutely hated that statement. And it's probably why we used to love it so much. So basically, whenever you would screw up at work, maybe you weren't able to process something and something held you back, you're not making your quotas or something, and he wants to know why, well, you just tell him, well, it is what it is. It really pissed him off. You know, it's kind of like one of those answers to not really answer the question. Like your kid asks you something, you say, "Why, Dad? Why? Because, just because." It is what it is. It's just a way to try to end the questioning or the conversation. And it works. It works. But unfortunately, in society today, sports has stopped for the near future, and it's starting to get a little bit farther into the future, which sucks. Not too many people are remaining quarantined, and I don't know if that's going to delay the virus from going away or if it's just going to spread it like right away. And maybe like what they're saying, there's not enough hospital beds, which would absolutely suck. But right now, there's still not a ton of information out there, and there's a lot of people that remain skeptical. But either way, we're here, and we're still going to talk about sports because we have nothing else to do, and that's what we love to do at the Odds Breakers. We talk about all aspects of sports. Can be the Major League Baseball coming up, can be the NFL, can be college football. And for this show, it's going to be a little bit about college football and the NFL. Lots of things have happened, and it's fun to talk about. And I've already done a lot of work on looking at college football for 2020. Already adjusted a lot of my power ratings, and I'm going to give you my power ratings, at least for the top 12. It's kind of like my pre-preseason power ratings. But before we get into that, I want to congratulate my Wisconsin Badgers for winning the NCAA championship. That's right. The NCAA championship. Well, I don't know if you heard, but ESPN's BPI ran a simulation with Wisconsin in Joe Lunardi's bracket as a 4 seed, and they happened to win the NCAA championship against BYU in the final game. I thought that to be pretty comical because I have different reasonings why we should give it to Wisconsin. Of course, I'm a fan of Wisconsin, so take everything you say from me with a grain of salt. But I find it very comical that ESPN found it their BPI to have Wisconsin as the champion. You know, I guess they ran the simulation through a computer, And Wisconsin successfully took down North Texas, and North Texas apparently was a 13 seed. We were a 4 seed, and then we beat Liberty, number 12, who ended up upsetting number 5 Auburn to get to the Sweet 16. Then Wisconsin beat number 9 Marquette in the Sweet 16. Somehow Marquette made it there. Don't know how. Then in the Elite 8, Wisconsin beat Duke. So there you go there, getting to the Final Four where they faced Maryland, who they've beaten already this year. And then in the final game, they played the BYU Cougars and ended up winning the NCAA championship. Bravo, ESPN, for finally getting it right. My excuse for Wisconsin winning the tournament was that Wisconsin was the number 1 seed in the toughest conference in basketball, which is the Big Ten. In the Big Ten tournament, Wisconsin was the top seed and had the share of the regular season. So that was my reasoning to give it to Wisconsin, but my alma mater didn't have to play it apparently this year because ESPN happened to run the simulation. So bravo. I kind of liked it the way they played out. There's a lot less stress. Your team just wins it. So liked how that result happened. Didn't have to watch the games, bite your nails or anything like that. So that was kind of perfect. But maybe this was just kind of retribution from the 2015 debacle against Duke, where the officials kind of were highly scrutinized after the game. But either way, I'll take it because, as you know, I love my Badgers. But no, in all reality, Kansas was definitely the number 1 seed going into this tournament and had the best chance to win it, which was only 18%. That's how good NCAA basketball was this year. It was fantastic, and unfortunately, it's over. But we're over it, and we're going to talk about a little football and any other sports that are coming up, and hopefully this thing clears and we can get our baseball back, which I handicap, and our horse racing and all that good stuff coming up here in the summer.
Oh, yeah!
Want to talk a little bit about some NFL news. And as you know, Tom Brady has become a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. Huge. And I got to tell you, I wonder what Saints fans are thinking right now. They must kind of be like,
that's terrible.
A little bit more competition there in the NFC South. You got Atlanta, always good with Matty Ice over there. I guess Carolina's kind of a pushover now, but Atlanta's tough. I think Tampa Bay is going to be very tough, and the Saints are the Saints, and I believe Drew Brees has re-upped his contract for a couple years. So the Tampa Bay Bucs with Bruce Arians have an opportunity to be very good. They're very good in the trenches, okay? They have a great defensive line, one of the best teams against the run. Their linebackers are good. The thing that Tampa Bay was terrible at was stopping the pass. They allowed 270 passing yards per game, which was third worst in the NFL. They couldn't run the ball that well, but I'm not that worried about that because Bruce Arians' teams rely on the pass a lot, and Tom Brady never really had a great running game behind him. He was always passing to his running backs. So the biggest thing that Tampa needs to fix is their secondary. And if they can do that, then they're going to have a very good chance this year to compete. And, Tom Brady, he's kind of a plug right in a Bruce Arians type system, just like Carson Palmer was back in Arizona. When he first came in, he did well. Obviously, Kurt Warner did really well there. I mean, this could be a great marriage here, and Tom Brady can finally prove that he doesn't need Bill Belichick to win big football games.
Freaking niggas every way like MJ.
So, what I will say is that there's probably a little bit too much hype in the markets right now. I believe the season win total went all the way up to 9.5. They're at minus 110 to make the playoffs as well. I personally would bet under the 9.5, and I would bet the same amount to make the playoffs. I haven't made the play yet, but I would consider it. And the reason that is because you have the Saints there, you have the Falcons there. Their schedule, they finished third in their division, or in the NFC South. So being third, they're going to have to play the Bears. They'll be okay playing the Giants. They should be. And then they would have to play the Rams, because I believe the Rams took third behind the Seahawks and the 49ers in the NFC West. So it's not exactly a cakewalk. And secondly, besides having the Saints there, it's still the first year that Brady's coming there. And you can make the playoffs with 9 wins. Okay? The Saints still might take the division. And if they win 9 games, they can get the wild card. You can hit your under 9.5, and you can hit your minus 110 to make the playoffs. Heck, you could even do it with 8 wins. If the NFC beats each other up and the AFC wins some more games than the NFC, you might see wild cards at 8 wins. That has happened before. So, not a terrible idea to go both sides. Do you just want to let the sportsbook hold on to your money until the end of next December? That's another question. But I think that would be the smartest way to play this right now. There's a lot of hype on this team. It quickly went, I believe it was 14-1 for Tampa Bay to win the NFC Championship, and now it's down to 8.5-1. I think they have a shot. Brady's going to be very motivated here, but at the same time, there's a better chance that the Saints are going to do it. There's probably a better chance that the 49ers are going to do it. And there's a better chance that Seattle or Dallas are probably going to do it. So, not exactly great odds there at 8.5-1. In other news, the Bears, my football team, decided to trade a 4th-round pick for Nick Foles, Super Bowl winning quarterback Nick Foles, and I thought that was interesting. I didn't want to have to give up a pick for him. Mitch was so terrible last year that I don't know, I guess anything could be an improvement, but, seems like they're trying to win. They're desperate. They signed Jimmy Graham, who can't block downfield and lost speed, and I thought that wasn't a good move either, but we'll see if this Nick Foles thing helps Trubisky. We don't know if he's going to replace Trubisky or if he's going to compete to start, or maybe he's going to be a little bit more favored to start. Pace keeps saying that Trubisky's still his guy. I mean, it's who Pace picked in the first round and traded up for. He's pretty stubborn. He's not going to let loose and admit he's wrong yet on that, but I think that Foles is going to get a legit shot to impress some people in the preseason. The Jaguars, though, could have given up a little bit more to get out of that contract. Instead, the Bears gave up a 4th-round pick. They could have gave back a pick. They got to have a massive contract. The good news is at least they take most of the cap hit for 2020 of $18 million. They save about $3 million in cap space here. Either way, the question is, will Nick Foles be able to get the Bears where they want to be right now? The Bears are trying to win right now, and I'm not so sure about that. Nick Foles was terrible the last 2 years on 1st and 2nd down passing. As a matter of fact, his rating, according to Warren Sharp, was worse than Mitch Trubisky on early downs. Now, on 3rd down, Nick Foles was pretty much better than everybody. So it's kind of like 3rd down was Nick Foles's. That was his time to shine. So, in my opinion, I mean, the move, I don't know if it's going to do a lot for the Bears. Hopefully, maybe Nick Foles all of a sudden becomes spectacular again and takes the Bears into the playoffs and wins, but that's very unlikely. The most likely thing is that, once again, Ryan Pace kind of got taken here and probably didn't have to give up a 4th-round pick for Nick Foles. You know, the only thing that makes me feel better about some of the terrible moves that Ryan Pace has done is thinking about Houston's trade of DeAndre Hopkins to the Arizona Cardinals for David Johnson.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
I mean, I thought I was getting bullshitted when that happened, and it's true. It was I talked about it last podcast a little bit because it just happened, but this was literally probably the worst trade that you're going to see for this whole remaining year, possibly the next 2 or 3 years. And so I'm just in shock that they would give up such a playmaker when you have guys like Deshaun Watson to get him the ball. They're trying to say now that he was going to request more money, blah, blah, blah. Well, he's a top 2 receiver. You should have just gave it to him. I think he might even be the best receiver. The best hands receiver. He doesn't cock off to people. You know, he doesn't run his mouth that much. He's relatively quiet compared to wide receivers, and you know how they like to be divas and how troublesome they can be. I just think that Arizona stole DeAndre Hopkins from Houston. One of the worst trades that I've definitely ever seen. And, just not so sure about the Texans now this year. You know what's great about this time of year, though? At least the NFL is still going on. I'm following all these pickups, taking notes on them. It's really fun to follow guys like Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, You get to see all the action in the NFL. You're going to use these players and pickups to account for your season win totals and your projections for how these teams are going to perform for the 2020 year. So at least we have that right now. And I know these guys are working from home, and it's nice with the internet these days you can do that. But, that's the little bit of silver lining that we have right now, is all the fun stuff going on in the NFL. Last thing I want to talk about is Philip Rivers was signed by the Indianapolis Colts for a 1-year deal. I thought more and more about that, and Philip Rivers to me is just kind of that guy that just can't get it done the first 3 quarters, and then he makes a comeback in the 4th quarter, and sometimes he wins. Lots of times he still loses anyway. But just never consistent enough to be a true quarterback to lead somebody through the playoffs. And the Colts, they had some injuries last year, just like everybody else. Jacoby Brissett couldn't obviously take them to the promised land over Houston or Tennessee. Very tough division. Well, Houston might take a little step back now. We'll see. But, still a very tough division. Jacksonville's only going to get better now. And I just don't see that it happening with Philip Rivers. Now, Philip Rivers does have a lot of experience there with Frank Reich. Reich was the offensive coordinator for the Chargers in 2014 and 2015. He was a QB coach back in 2013, so they at least share that. But being that Andrew Luck left was a huge detriment to this team. And so not too excited about the Colts like I was last year at this time. 2 quarterbacks still unsigned, Cam Newton and Jameis Winston. And Jameis will land somewhere, in my opinion. Throws a ton of picks, but he takes chances, and sometimes it still works out. I mean, over 5,000 passing yards last year. You've seen him go into LA and beat the Rams. He's capable of doing that, but sometimes he just makes those boneheaded mistakes and Receivers read them secondary reads them like a book. Linebackers read them like a book and jump the routes and just pretty much take them to school. So if he can just fix that, I mean, the guy's got a ton of talent. Someone's going to take a shot with him, and he's not going to get nearly the amount of money he thought he was going to get. But maybe a San Diego would take a shot with him. I don't know. I think they're going to probably go with LA Chargers. They're probably going to go with a rookie, but who knows? They might try to pick him up on the cheap. I would think that maybe the Jets might pick him up on the cheap as a backup. It doesn't look like their quarterback's doing that well over there in New York. Sam Darnold showed some good things, but he's not there yet. You maybe think a team like Atlanta might even bring him in for a backup for Matt Ryan. I mean, Matt Ryan's a pocket passer. Jameis Winston is a pocket passer. Doesn't have the legs to run. So you got to kind of look for those teams that might want to pick him up. Heck, Miami. Miami's got nothing right now. Maybe they'll pick him up on the short term and still draft a guy like Tua Tagovailoa. So we'll see what happens there. As far as Cam Newton's concerned, I don't think he's going to get nearly what he wants, and who knows, maybe it'll force him into retirement. But the way the Panthers handled him, and the truth is, I think he hit some injuries. The way that he handled the Panthers sure didn't end up too well after they lost that Super Bowl. After that Super Bowl year, he was MVP. He got hurt. His completion percentage went way down. The threat of his legs went way down, which kind of goes to show you that teams are also playing against his legs. Quarterbacks that can run the ball, as you see with Lamar Jackson, you see with Josh Allen, they bring that third dimension to a team, the running game, the passing game, and then the delayed running game with the quarterback taking off, getting chunks of yards, has been so good for some of these teams, and that's why a lot of these teams are switching to a high-powered offense. So, guys that have been injured, like Cam Newton, that can't run anymore necessarily, or guys that can't run at all, like Jameis Winston, not a huge market for them. So we'll see what happens here. It's going to be fun to track. All right, without further ado, it is time to get into my 2020 college football pre-preseason power ratings, or you can call them the way too early power ratings. I'm going to go over my top 12 teams. When I make decisions on adjusting, I take my number from last year. I find out what their last 3 recruiting classes were, not necessarily the 2021, but the 2017, 2018, and 2019 recruiting class. I look at the production that they lost, and I look at if there's any changes, graduate transfers that might be coming in if I already know of something, or transfers from the year before. So look at all that. This is not a season win total one. This has nothing to do with season win totals because I have to factor in the schedule and a few other things when I do season win totals. But this is just pure, straight beginning power ratings. And this will adjust as news comes out, as announcements are made, as players start to shine a little bit or players start to fail a little bit. So just remember, this is all subject to change. But at number 1, I have a new number 1. LSU is number 1 last year at the end, but it's back to Ohio State. Okay. Ohio State, I had them very high last year, 33.5. Extremely high, a lot higher than the other years I've had power ratings. Of course, LSU and Ohio State was something special this last year, but they lost a lot, ranking 92 in returning production. But the important thing is that they're second best in 2017 and 2018 recruiting class. So, I mean, they reloaded. Let's just face it. That's what they do. They reload. And the fact that they retained Justin Fields is huge because teams like Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma. They're not retaining their starting quarterbacks. Ohio State is. So the loss of Chase Young is going to hurt a little bit, but so what? I mean, they're going to bring in another edge rusher that's going to make some noise. They only get punished 2 points. They are still my number one team. They're at 31.5 points better than the average team. And 33.5 down to 31.5, not bad, because there's a significant dropout. To my second team. And my second team is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Big surprise.
The dynasty has just begun.
Well, it could happen again for Alabama. They lost Tua, which was it's going to be tough for them to replace him and his production. But at the same time, this is Alabama, and they changed their offense to just be a lot more pass friendly over the years. They have very good quarterbacks in Mac Jones, to compete. Younger brother Tagovailoa and Bryce Young. Those three, they're fine. Whoever comes out of that it's not going to be a huge drop off from Tua, so I'm not too worried about that. They do lose Ruggs and Jetty, and it hurts this team. But I mean, they have the number one and top three from 2018 to number one in 2017. One of the top ones in 2019. They reload. It's Nick Saban. It's Nick Saban, guys. And their schedule is not actually that bad this year. Now, of course, this is not about season win totals, but it's also nice to see Devonta Smith returning and Najee Harris returning to this team. So there's some help there. They had a lot of guys on defense injured. So I had Alabama finishing at 24 last year, but that's because they lost Tua and they lost some defense, some injuries early in the year, some linebacker. They're all coming back. And so I actually upgraded them to 26 points better than the average team. So big drop off from 31.5 down to 26. But to be honest with you, for most teams, I start around the 26, 27 range for my top power ratings in the beginning of the year anyway. Ohio State just has that much production, and well, that's how they reload this year, and they're amazing. But either way, I make adjustments as this goes. I have Alabama, my second team, at 26 points better than the average team. The next one I have is Clemson at number 3. Clemson, I had them finishing at 28 points better than the average team last year, and I have them at 25 now. The loss of production was similar to Ohio State, and they still had good recruiting classes. Number 16 in 2017, top 12 in 2018. The Higgins and Simmons loss is going to be tough. Simmons was a beast on defense, but I think that ETN staying is huge. I do not love that they're also losing 3 offensive linemen. So, T. Higgins, Simmons, but they get Ross back. The 3 linemen, I think they can reload there. They've had some good recruiting classes. Their recruiting classes have never been great at Clemson, right? Let's see. They rank 10th in 2019 and 7th in 2018. So, yeah, not quite as good as Ohio State, but obviously Trevor Lawrence being there is the important thing. They are my third best team at 25 points ahead. Okay, 25. The fourth best team is the Auburn Tigers. And I got to tell you, this is the most intriguing team to me, okay? Because they've had top 11 recruiting classes those 3 years. Very consistent there. They lose some trenches to the draft, offensive line and D ends, but they also return a decent amount of production, 60% on both sides of the ball. I really like how they return most of their skill positions with Seth Williams and Matthew Hill at wide receiver. I like how they, Bo Nix coming back to play quarterback is pretty huge when, teams like LSU and Alabama lost their quarterback in the same side of the SEC. You have Auburn retaining their quarterback here. So Auburn got a big bump. They are 18.5 points better than the average team last year. They are 21 points better than the average team, in my opinion. Now, I'm higher on Auburn than other power ratings, but I'm going to stand firm with this one unless I see some serious changes here. Number 5, I have Georgia. They're at number 22 points a bit better than the average team last year, and they are at 20. And this is another team that lost quarterback, lost of Jake Fromm. They're what I do like is they're third in 2017 recruiting, which really helped, and they also returned 80% of a great defense. Okay, so that's great for Georgia. They're number 1 in 2018 in recruiting and number 2 in 2019. As a matter of fact, the recruiting has been absolutely legit. So that's why I had to keep them up there pretty high. So I don't think DeAndre Swift's going to be a big loss. He didn't do that great in the combine. I think they had a good offensive line anyway. The big question to me is, how is Jamie Newman going to play at quarterback? He's a transfer from Wake Forest. He's going to fill in the quarterback slot this year. They also have some really good freshmen that's going to push him, give him some competition. But, I don't know if Jamie Newman's a fit because he played in the fastest offense at plays per game out of Wake Forest. And Todd Monken, he's the offensive coordinator, the new one from Southern Miss. His offense was more like number 82 in pace of play. Okay, Wake Forest was number 1, and Todd Monken at Southern Miss was 82. So this might be a big change for Jamie Newman at quarterback. So I'm not super excited for that on Georgia, but the recruiting classes have absolutely been legit. Number 6, I have Florida. Okay, the Florida Gators. They finished at 16.5 last year, and they are at 18.5 this year. This is a dangerous team with a great schedule that could set themselves up for an SEC championship run. Great top 10 recruiting over the past 4 years. Top 10. And they have some decent return in production. The Gators lose some skill positions like Van Jefferson and Josh Hammond, some wide receivers there, but they have guys like Jacob Copeland and Justin Watkins, great recruits the last couple of years that should step right in, 4 or 5-star guys, and returning their whole offensive line is huge. For quarterback Kyle Trask, this team's going to go as far as he takes them, okay? But they're going to have some serious protection for him, and Florida's got a very, very good shot at making it very, very far. The number 7 team I have is the Wisconsin Badgers. Obviously my team, and I'll tell you, I know a lot about them. I had them at 19 points better than the average team last year. I have them at 18 coming into 2020. Obviously, losing the Rose Bowl sucked, but they had a 4-1 turnover ratio, and they only lost by 1 point, and they outgained Oregon by over 100 yards. I mean, without some of those boneheaded mistakes and without the terrible call at the end, they would have won the Rose Bowl. But at the same time, these kids have to know you can't fumble the ball in such a big game. I mean, that was sloppy. I kind of blame the coaching a little bit, Chris. That's why Paul Chryst is not a top 5 coach. Maybe top 10, I don't know. But he's got to go get over that hump. And maybe he will. Okay, but losing Jonathan Taylor hurts. But the truth is, Wisconsin is a running back system school. You can see guys like Groshek getting 10 to 15-yard chunks behind that line. They returned 4 out of 5 offensive linemen. They might have the best offensive lineman this year, and offensive line in college football. You know the quarterback play is going to be better with the return of Jack Cohn or maybe Graham Mertz even pushing him and beating him for the job. Jack Cohn can only get better here. Graham Mertz might even surpass him. So quarterback play is going to be better. Okay, either one of them, those guys can start next year. I'm not sure. But where they lack, they're going to lose Zach Bond and Chris Orr, which was huge on defense. You remember when Chris Orr got hurt in that Big Ten championship game? They just got their asses kicked in the middle. And they do have some good young linebackers coming up, and they're kind of linebacker you know. They replaced them with Isaiah Greenmay and Leo Chanel. So I'm hoping that works out well. The big question for me is wide receivers. Then they lost Cruikshank to a transfer to Rutgers. It's closer to home for him. And Quintez Cephas going to the draft, and A.J. Taylor expired his eligibility. But you have Danny Davis and Kendrick Pryor there, and they do have some definitely a lot of actual experience. And so you hope that they're leaders there. You have a guy named Abbott coming in. That should help, but that's the biggest question as receiver for me. But they returned their secondary. That was very good last year. They returned their defensive line. They returned their tight end in Ferguson. Like I said before, 4 out of 5 offensive linemen. Van Lannen, he's a big tackle there. They have a great shot here to make some serious noise again, and they deserve to definitely be in my top 7. I have the Badgers at number 7 right now with some upside. If some players really step up this year, and they can possibly add a few things like maybe a little RPO game and some of their receivers turn out, then they're going to be just a big force once again in the Big Ten. Number 8, I have Penn State, and Penn State's very close to Wisconsin here. Losing Gross Matos is tough. Losing KJ Hamler on wide receivers is going to be tough, but this team recruited very well. You know, they retain guys like Sean Clifford, their quarterback, now going into his second year, and they still have that edge linebacker. Micah Parsons is huge. You know, I think guys like Justin Shorter and Jahan Dotson are going to step right in and replace Hamler. These are 4 or 5-star kids the last couple of years coming in at receiver. So Penn State's going to be dangerous, and they're going to be the most dangerous thing to Ohio State. They're going to be right under Ohio State there, chasing their curtails, you know, hoping to win. They do get to play them at home, I believe, this year. So their recruiting's been pretty good. I think their classes have been like top 15, top 10-ish. Looks like top 15 in 2017, top 6 in 2018, top 12 in 2019. So their recruiting's been very good, kind of like Auburn-ish. Yet they get to return their quarterback too. They're kind of the Auburn of the Big Ten if I was going to compare them. So definitely like what they got going on there. I'll be rooting for them, but obviously you're going to be rooting for Wisconsin more. But they deserve to be number 8. I have them at 17.75 points ahead of the average team, and last year they finished at 16.5. The problem with them, they still were outgained for their wins last year. They did catch some luck last year, so we'll see what happens with them. Oklahoma is next at number 9, and losing Jalen Hurts, CeeDee Lamb is going to leave some uncertainty. It is, but they do bring back a lot of an offensive line. The defense should also improve. They returned 70% production, and I do trust Lincoln Riley. But now who's going to quarterback that's any good, and who's going to be their big playmaker? I don't know. They do have a top 8 recruiting class from 2017, which is huge. And obviously 2018 top 9 and 2019 top 6. So they definitely know how to recruit there. Just going to see some fresh new faces in their skill position and the receiver and their quarterback. Now, of course, when Kyler Murray came in for Baker Mayfield, I said the same thing, and I was obviously extremely wrong about that because Kyler Murray was a lot better than I thought. I thought he was a little bit overrated transferring in from Texas Tech, but I was wrong about that. So I could be wrong about Oklahoma, but they at least get to be number 9 for me. Number 10, I have the LSU Tigers at 17 points better than the average team, and this is my biggest adjustment I have probably ever made in college football. Yeah, well, LSU still has a lot of upside. They lost a ton of production. They lost the best quarterback in college football, and they lost the best offensive coordinator in college football in Joe Brady, obviously. Good draft class. In 2017, they ranked 7th in 2017. And I mean recruiting class. They ranked 15 in 2018 in recruiting and number 5 in 2019. So they should reload pretty nicely. But if you look at their returning production, it ranks 127th out of 130 teams. And that's pretty low. 30% of production they return in offense, which ranks 128th, and 54% on defense that ranks 92nd. The only 3 teams worse than them were Air Force, UTEP, and Utah in returning production. So there you go. There you have it. I mean, I can see LSU coming out the gate a little bit rough. A little bit rough. And then I can kind of see them getting better and then shocking some teams there. Ed Ogeron, what a fantastic guy, bringing the kids together. I hope he replaced Joe Brady. I had to downgrade them the most out of any offensive coordinator I've ever made an adjustment for. I mean, Joe Burrow was one of the most I've ever adjusted for a quarterback. I think there may have been 1 or 2, like maybe Lamar Jackson or something, I adjusted more in the past. But you got to add some back for recruiting at least. But still, 34 to 17 is roughly a 17.5 point adjustment. So it is a 17.5 point adjustment. So still have them at my top 10. So no one kill me on social media, please. Notre Dame, I have at number 11 at 16 points better than the average team. They finished at 17 last year. They lost a lot on defense, but they still retained some good talent on offense, minus wide receiver Chase Claypool. Their recruiting is always top 15. They retain Ian Book, which is great. They keep their quarterback. So I had to kind of keep them close to what they were last year. They could shock some teams. I'm not going to be like that one that wants to fade them. I know they play the Badgers pretty early in the season in Lambeau Field. That's going to be an awesome game. Can't wait for that game. Actually contemplating going to that game. But, not going to be wanting to fade Notre Dame by any means. I think, this could be that bounce back year for Ian Book, and I think he wants it. The last team I have was a toss-up here, and the team is in Texas. Just between 2 teams in Texas, Texas Tech and the Texas Longhorns, and the Longhorns had to edge them out because it is a make or break year for Tom Herman. He fired his coordinators. 2 new ones coming in. Is going to be a make or break year for this team. This is the year they have to overtake Oklahoma. They have to. Okay? This is their only shot here. All right? Chris Ash, new defensive coordinator. Wasn't that good of a head coach at Rutgers, but he was very successful at defense coordinator at Ohio State when they won it all in 2014. And he was successful before that in Wisconsin. Okay? Wisconsin had a very good defense. J.J. Watt, I think, was under him. Mike Yurcich was a quarterback's coach and passing coordinator at Ohio State last year, and he was the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma State the 5 years before that. Very good offensive coordinator. He should shake some stuff up over there. Sam Ehlinger returns at quarterback with most of the offensive line intact and running backs. They lose a few receivers, Devin Duvernay and Colin Johnson, but guys like Brennan Eagles and Avante Woodard will step right in. I think their offense will not miss a beat, and they retain 82% of their defense. Now, their defense did suck last year, but maybe they just needed some better coaching, and that's where Chris Ash comes in. Okay, so I had to bump them up to number 12. Just I could be wrong. I mean, I bumped them up from number 9 finishing last year, so they actually went up about 7 points in my power ratings. A pretty big jump, but I think this has to be their year with Tom Herman, and Sam Ehlinger is a winner. Love the kid. I think now this team can finally come together. So there you have it. There is my top 12 in power ratings. I think that, to be honest with you, if you see a playoff team come out of the Big 12, I think Texas has just the same amount of shot as Oklahoma this year. I know Lincoln Riley's awesome, but it just feels like this should be Texas's year to jump in. They are now at 40-1 to win the national championship, which is a bit hot. But well, for how Texas has played, it hasn't been. Those aren't the greatest odds, but because you still have your Bamas, Clemson, Ohio State, Auburn, Georgia, Florida, Wisconsin's going to be tough. Penn State, but they have a shot. I mean, they could be the team coming out of the Big 12 this year, and a lot of people have Oklahoma fatigue. Not sure if that's going to factor in. You know, it usually shouldn't factor in. It should be how teams play, but you know how things go in college football. We'll see what happens, and I mean, that's not terrible odds at 40-1 is all I'm saying. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for your kind words that you said during this terrible, terrible virus outbreak that we're dealing with. I'm going to be studying college football for the next upcoming weeks and the NFL a lot. I mean, bounce right back into the UFC when that comes back. And I believe that's coming back in April. That's the earlier one that's coming back. Baseball is postponed a bit. So, just relax, enjoy the time with your families, possibly get some chores done that you've had on your list for a while. So thank you very much for being a listener here. Please feel free to relay any questions and go get some winners.